everybody. So today I'm going to be chatting with you about something that's potentially controversial, and that's why I don't make New Year's resolutions. I don't know how many other people are making them, but I find the practice like somewhat counterproductive, and so I don't partake in it. While I chat about that with you, I'm going to be pulling out some different household items like rubbing alcohol, Elmer's glue if I can find it. I think my kid put it somewhere, I don't know where it is. And just different household things you might have around the house. Does everybody have rubbing alcohol? And I don't know if people typically have these things in their house, but I do. And so actually, I bought this for watercolor use. So we're gonna be mixing it with watercolor and we're gonna make fireworks, something for the new year. If that sounds appealing to you, consider liking and subscribing, and we can do more of this kind of stuff together. I believe that a lot to do with art is experimentation, playing. You learn so much, and a lot of times I don't really see people making videos about that kind of thing, but I think that playing around and the messy stuff that we get into is super useful to know that lots of artists are practicing this. I chose Daniel Smith watercolors because they're great for wet and wet, and I own some nice dark colors. Before we get back to why I don't make New Year's resolutions, I want to let you know a little bit what's going on here. So I'm kind of going to be throwing all kinds of things at the paper, trying to see what works, to see what could possibly make something that looks like a firework. I could have Googled this, I could have watched a YouTube video, but sometimes you just want to like experiment to find out what works best for you. I've seen this pen and later on the ink work really well, but I did not use thin enough layers. And I believe that using the really thick paint didn't allow anything to gel together. I really needed to be using more water. Maybe I'll try it again another day. But I kind of just moved on. I was like, I don't really think this is going to work. And I experimented with other things. I liked the marks that the X-Acto knife made, but I wasn't sure that I could do the curves that I wanted to do. So we've done pretty much everything we can do with wet and wet, at least anything that I can think of. And I might want to experiment a little bit more with this on a flat surface because I have this raised right now. But there's some stuff we can still do on it dry, like the magic eraser. But then there's some things we can do. We can lay down ahead of time. This is the official one, the masking fluid. Masking fluids end up always not working for me because they always dry out before I can get to use them if I don't use them often enough. But I've never tried Elmer's glue, so we're gonna experiment with that and see how that works out. And then some salt, which we could have done wet and I forgot to do on this one. So back to New Year's resolutions. I should preface this by saying that I'm not someone who finds dates super important. I usually know what day of the week it is, but I don't necessarily know exactly what the date is. I can be somewhat time blind. Back to the experiment here for a moment. I'm hoping that some of the colored pencils that I'm putting down will reappear after I sprinkle salt on them or rubbing alcohol. It didn't really happen. Perhaps the paint was too thick. It certainly worked better later with thinner paint. I'm putting down Prismacolor, Polychromos Faber-Castell, Caran d'Ache Luminance, and Derwent Lightfast. Pencils to see which one resists the watercolor the most, as well as a clear wax crayon. They each have some amount of wax in them and oil in them, and both wax and oil do resist water, so theoretically watercolor should beat off of it. I found the magic eraser to not work great. I think it's going to take a while for me to figure out how to use it effectively. Here's Valkyrie. She looked so cute sleeping while I was painting. Okay, so discovered that I was laying on the paint too thick. Oops, shouldn't leave this in here too long. The techniques don't really work with watercolor that's like you use like wash. It doesn't seem to do much. I mean, the salt, I think it just mostly dried too fast. The colored pencil showed through when I used a thinner layer, so let's see if we can keep that up. And then, like, how dark does the sky really need to be when fireworks brighten the area? I need to look at the pictures more, see if they're anywhere maybe the sky isn't as dark because the fireworks are lighting it up. The Elmer's glue is taking so long to dry, so I'm going to put a heat lamp on it and then continue my experiments with the original. So the Elmer's glue is only wet in the very teeny center, and then the masking fluid is sticky. I think it's always sticky. Just compared to the Elmer's glue, which dries really like smooth, it just seems a little weird. I'm gonna go ahead and lay down the color now. While that's drying, we can move on to the new piece of paper. I've let it dry for about 10 minutes and it's not anywhere close, so I'm gonna put the heat lamp on it for a minute. It's made some really beautiful patterns, the salt has. And putting the dryer on might change how those salt patterns end up, but it might not. While I'm playing with more wax resists, I'm gonna let you know that New Year's resolutions has never been a cultural practice that I feel guilty for not doing or feel left out for missing. I did it all the time as a kid. I guess I just know that it won't work for me after my childhood experiences. I'm very curious and I'm really happy to try new things. I've tried New Year's resolutions multiple times without success, and I'm happy to stick with my own unique way of doing things. I'm always looking to improve, and I'm always working on my mental health and looking for ways to grow. I love learning, and that doesn't stop or start at the beginning of the year. I like to meet myself where I'm at, and my personal growth doesn't adhere to an arbitrary calendar. The green spray bottle is just water, by the way. When I see an opportunity for growth, I take it, no matter where it happens to fall in the year. In a second, I'm going to pick up the magic eraser and try to see if I can move some of the watercolor out of the way off of the wax, and it didn't work particularly well. Now I'm also removing the salt. It is a good exfoliator, that's for sure. Okay, the moment of truth. The Elmer's glue versus the traditional masking fluid. Which one's gonna work better? Spoiler alert, I'm not sure if this comes as a shock to anyone but me, but the Elmer's glue dried hard as a rock and didn't come up at all. I think I'm thinking about like when it comes off of your skin really easily, and I was thinking watercolor paper because it has possibly gelatin in it. I don't know. I thought it might work the same. It does not. I believe that making New Year's resolutions or any type of resolution can potentially stop us from being agile and to listening to our own current needs. It can stop us from adapting to new circumstances. Being kind of stuck in your ways might be a good thing if what you're usually doing is something really toxic, but Might be setting yourself up to rigidly stick to a new behavior that might not be a huge improvement, when if you were more agile, you might discover something new that might be even better than the old bad habit or the new bad habit, or just something that isn't really serving you at this point in time. You might beat yourself up for not meeting your resolution when meeting the resolution might not even be that great for you anymore. So I realize that colored pencil can definitely show through, but it only does it on like a super light color, thin layer. Super good to know for if I ever want to do that. And if you cover it with a thick amount of, my dog is upset. She wants to be fed dinner. If you cover it with a thick amount of wax, but when I did that, like painted and then did that, it just didn't look great. And you can color over. So this is what I'm doing. This is actually turning out much different than I was expecting because the colors are separating. There's probably just a lot more water because I did a more watery wash, but with more pigment in it, if that makes any sense. And it's separating. I think it looks amazing. I don't know if I'm gonna do anything else to it. It looks so cool, but I might do it again, and then like that can be my firework because I don't know if I want to ruin this and paint over it. This is the base for the final experiment that I'll do, the final painting that I'll actually put fireworks in. I'm putting salt and then I'll put the rubbing alcohol, but then I'm also going to put the heat lamp on it so that the rubbing alcohol doesn't spread quite as much, so the red doesn't separate out. This one, I'm not planning to put any fireworks on top. I just want to keep playing with the rubbing alcohol and see what other effects I can get. Back to New Year's resolutions. It's wonderful to have certain things in mind that we want to change, but until we're actually ready to change them, often we can't. Isn't this amazing? It's so gorgeous. So telling myself that right now, this is when I will change because it is January 1st, it's the beginning of the year, everyone else is doing it. It's not necessarily going to make me change unless I'm really, truly ready. Maybe that works for some people. I really don't know. It certainly would not work for me. I was so tentative about that first mark. I spent a lot of time figuring out how to make these, luminescent marks on the watercolor paper. And I didn't spend much time studying fireworks and their shapes or anything. So I felt woefully unprepared for this moment, and I think it shows. I don't think that the fireworks turned out particularly good. I think that the real reward of this experiment is not the final product, but how much I learned from playing with the materials, even the Elmer's glue. Like, I should have known that might happen. I didn't even think of it. I did not even think that it was going to become so, rock hard. So let's philosophize some more. All too often, even small goals that we have can be thwarted by changes that happen in our environment that we didn't expect. Things that hold us up and keep us stuck where we were. And then we blame ourselves for it. I made a New Year's resolution. I need to adhere to it. And the reality is, this was not the moment for this to change. Transitions are really difficult, and they can really make you stressed out. And it's, I think, really important to take that into account whenever you're making a change. There are good times and better times and bad times to make changes, and it's important to keep that in mind. If it's January 1st and the stars all align and it happens to be a good time for me to make changes, and I definitely will take advantage of the cultural practice of resolution making. Otherwise, I'm going to just do it when it feels right and appropriate for me to make any changes. So here's our final product. I think it looked more exciting wet, but it's still beautiful dry. I love the effect of the salt and the rubbing alcohol. I definitely want to incorporate this into my work in as many ways as possible. And of course, I love writing on top of watercolor with colored pencil. Who would have known that would be what I ended up doing at the end of all of these experiments? But, it just works. So I guess I'll keep doing it. And on that note, Happy New Year, everybody. To making or not making New Year's resolution, whatever's your flavor.
Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.